Death makes us ask questions that are extremely uncomfortable at the moment. Who am I? Why did I live? What will remain after me? Sometimes these questions touch on religion, sometimes on art, sometimes on silence, and in each state, an attempt to pass, to accept, to overcome. There is a theory that all art is a fight against dying. We write books to stay. We build a building to survive. We make children to continue. All of this is a response to the main fear, to disappear without a trace. But traces are erased too. Everything disappears. Empires fall. Languages disappear. Stars fade. The inevitability of erasure is frightening, and at the same time, it liberates. If everything disappears, then maybe we shouldn't be so afraid. It's not death that's scary, it's a forgotten, meaningless life. Maybe we are afraid not of dying, but of what has not truly lived, of exchanging the living for the safe. Sincerity is a help. Feelings are on algorithms. We are afraid that at the last moment we will understand. All this happened, but we were somewhere on the side. The paradox is that the more we push away the thought of death, the less we live. And the closer we allow it to be, the brighter, the fuller each day becomes. Because it may be the last, and that is what makes it infinitely valuable. There is something amazing in the way different eras have understood death. In antiquity, as a meeting with eternity. In the Middle Ages, as retribution or salvation. In the Age of Enlightenment, as a logical conclusion. And in our time, as a problem that needs to be solved. Today, death is a medical problem. They try to postpone it, slow it down, cheat it. We fight it with technology, diets, biohacking. But what if the point is not in defeating death, but in, what if we are not supposed to expose it to awareness? Death is a universal equalizer. It comes to the rich and the poor, to the believers and the skeptics, to the wise and the foolish. It is no different. That is its brutal honesty. It does not bargain. It does not take bribes. And that is why all conditions are before it, even kings. When we fear death, we are, in essence, afraid of losing control. We are able to command things, time, bodies. But death is something that cannot be commanded. It is freedom, but not ours. The freedom of the world will take us when it deems it necessary. But is it possible to learn to die? In some cultures, yes. In the Japanese samurai tradition, there was an art of dying beautifully, with honor, with dignity. In Tibet, they learned to pass through death as another form of consciousness. Even in Western psychotherapy, there is a term, existential consent. This is when a person accepts the end, not as an enemy, but as a boundary. Maybe the purpose of life is not to run away from death, but to make friends with it. Look at it not with fear, but with respect, as a part of yourself, as a shadow that moves nearby but does not frighten, but reminds. Because even the simplest sunset is a reminder. Nothing lasts forever. And that's what makes it so wonderful. Impermanence and disappearance makes beauty ancient. Death makes us humble. It breaks illusions. We can make plans for years ahead, buy expensive things, collect, argue, prove, accumulate. But in the end, it all comes down to one question. Who was I? Not in front of others, not on social media, but inside. Was I honest? Did I truly love? Did I leave in someone's soul the warmth that my body experiences? The wise said, think about death, and you will understand how to live, not in fear, not in despair, but in clarity. Imagine that your life is a short fire in the deep night. You can be afraid of the darkness, or you can become the light. Death reminds, everything is powerful, here and now. Not in the future, not in the ideal, not someday. A smile, a secret time, supporting words, a hug, forgiveness. None of this can be delayed, because tomorrow is not promised. There is a special beauty in knowing about death and still living, loving, creating, taking risks, laughing. Not in spite of, but because of. Like a flower that opens in the morning, you can see that by evening it will be gone. Some questions. What comes after? Emptiness? Light? Reincarnation? There is no answer. And maybe this is where the power of life lies, in what we don't know. And in this ignorance, faith is born. Some in God, some in the sense, some simply in tomorrow. But what if fear is not an enemy, but an ally? Death may be the final mirror. It doesn't lie. It doesn't flatter. It shows everything that was. No filters, no additives. It doesn't care how many followers or money you have. It asks, who have you become? At that moment, when a person stands on the border of life and non-existence, everything he wore on the outside falls off. Only technology remains, only the essence, the real I. And this is what makes you think. Maybe it is worth living in such a way that in the end there is no shame. Some near-death experiences report flashes of memory, experiences of endless sunsets or light. Maybe it's brain chemistry, or maybe it's something more. We don't know. But each story tells the main story. A person doesn't leave, doesn't pass through the courtyard, not before God, before themselves. And the sooner we start asking ourselves these questions, the less fear there will be in the end. Because the fear of death is essentially the fear of living someone else's life. The fear of being a stranger in your own body. To be silent when you want to scream. To hide when you need to go. To be patient when you need space. Death can be the end, or it can be the completion of a work, like the last note of a symphony, like the silence after the final chord. Not scary, necessary for the music to have meaning. And while we are alive, we have a choice. Not to defeat death, to defeat emptiness, to fill life with addition, to make it our own, to live so that in the end it is not scary, calm, so that it is possible to say, I was here, I felt, I lived. Or maybe we are too afraid of death because we love life so much, because it is beautiful with all its pain, anxiety, loneliness, because it has the smell of rain, the warmth of hands, laughter, light in the window, memories that do not disappear, even if we disappear. Because even one step is already a miracle. Even one touch of reality is already eternity. And if death is the end, then only on paper. Because each of us lives in other people, in their memory, in their phrases, in their actions that they once did. They influenced our words. Sometimes even after treatment, a person continues to live the way someone loves, how someone dreams, how someone looks in the world. Death is like a period at the end of a sentence. Without it, the phrase makes no sense. Without it, there is no conclusion. But there is a story, and every day is another word in that story. Sometimes short, sometimes heavy, sometimes beautiful. But while we are alive, we are authors. We have the right to write the way we feel, to live fully, to be afraid and to go, to fall and to rise, to suffer and to believe anyway. Because the fear of death is not a sign of weakness. It is simply a reminder of how much we value life. And if one day, in the very last silence, we manage to say, not I'm afraid, but I'm grateful, then we have not lived in vain. And in all this, there is a strange harmony. We begin to fear the end because we love. We hide from the darkness because we thirst for light. We fear silence because we know the price of words. Death is not a mistake in the system. It is its foundation. It is the boundary beyond which everything else takes on meaning. We live. We know that it is not eternal. And it is this knowledge that makes every moment an uplift. So let fear not be a chain. Let it be a reminder that time is precious, that feeling is not a weakness, that life is a gift, not eternal, but real. And when one day there is silence, let there be no horror in it, peace, not regret, but for now, not emptiness, but a trace, death. It accompanies us from birth. We know it is inevitable. We speak of it in whispers. We pretend it is far away. But why? Why has the fear of death become so universal? Man is a real being on Earth, aware of real mortality. This knowledge is paradoxical. We live. We know that one day we will stop living. And with this knowledge, we move forward every day. Perhaps this is the main source of sound, the awareness of finitude. The fear of death has a biological basis. Millions of years of evolution have taught us to fear danger, to protect the body, to automatically avoid anything that might cause harm. The brain is not simply afraid of dying, it is coded for survival. When we approach death, in movies, on the streets, in the news, the brain activates its comfort zone. It does not distinguish whether the threat is real or imaginary. But the fear of death is not just biology. It is a product of culture. As children, we are told that someone has gone away or fallen asleep forever. We rarely hear direct words. Death is surrounded by metaphors. It is pushed out of language, and thus it becomes even more frightening. Religions tried to tame death. They proposed afterlives, rebirth, paradise, karma, reincarnation. These concepts did not destroy fear, but transformed it. From the horror of the end to the hope of continuation, humanity needs consolation. Philosophers asked a different question, not about what will happen after, but why are we afraid? Epicurus said, "When we are, there is no death. When death comes, we are no more." He claimed that fear is illogical, but reason rarely overcomes feelings. Maybe it's not death itself that we're afraid of. It's that we won't succeed, won't implement, won't finish, won't leave a mark. In today's world, with a full set of goals, online grandfathers, and ambitions, death becomes not just the end, but a symbol of what was missed. Psychologists believe that the fear of death can be transformed. It can become a motivation. Live, knowing that time is short. Love, realizing that no one is eternal. Create, understanding that it is death that gives meaning to life. Just as light is valued against our background, so every moment of life is valuable precisely because it is finite. And yet, in our earthly souls, we remain those children who are afraid of the dark. Only now, this darkness is not a room, but an emptiness for consciousness. We are afraid to dissolve, to cease to be, to become anything. And in this fear is a reflection of our humanity. And each of us walks this road alone. But if you look more closely, we are not alone. Because everyone who lives also walks, also fears, also searches. And maybe this is the main answer. To live means to feel, to fear, to hope, and still to move forward. Some psychologists believe that it is the fear of our own country that shapes our morals, values, empathy. It makes us human. Imagine that death does not exist, that there is no end. Would the word forgiveness be important? Would I love be necessary? Or would we put it all off until later, an endless, irresponsible tomorrow? When we face the thought of death, we most often think about life, about what is really important, not about salary, not about status, about parents, about friends, about time that is passing and that we will never get back. The fear of death makes us appreciate the present. It reminds us, you are here, you are alive. Some cultures, on the contrary, accept death as part of a circle. In Mexico, it's the Day of the Dead, where families celebrate and remember the departed. In the East, there are meditations on transience, a practice in which a person remembers every day. Everything comes, everything disappears, everything dies. This is not pessimism, this is liberation. Science is also looking for answers. Neuroscientists study what happens in the brain in the last minutes. Physicists argue about the results and information. Technologies promise life extension, cryo-freezing, intelligent loading. But the question remains, Is it possible to truly defeat death without losing the very soul of a person? Because maybe immortality is not a blessing, but a curse. Without the fear of the end, there is no existence of ancient values. When everything is eternal, nothing matters. Only finitude makes moments real. Perhaps the fear of death is not a bug, but a feature. It does not make us weak. It makes us alive. Every fear, every breath, every "I fear the throne" says that we are still here, that the heart beats, that we still have a chance, not to avoid death, but to truly live life. We allow the decision to be made about the death of the event, the finale, the closing of the book. But perhaps it is not a point, just a transition, like a winter sleep from which you do not wake up, like boundaries beyond which the meaning of familiar words influences. Many great minds, faced with death, their own or their loved ones, spoke about how it purifies perception. It becomes a mirror. Everything superficial falls away. Only the early remains. Not what you bought, but what you gave. Not what you said out loud, but what you felt. Not your image, but your essence. Traces of someone who lived.